Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in The Stream. A decade ago, Burundi was a blossoming democracy. In April, it was plunged into political crisis. Today, the country is chaotic. We'll speak to Burundians about their future. I would like you to meet poet Keti Nivea Bandi. This is her ode to her homeland that she left in May.
Home, a distant, fading sight. My hands search the wind for one last smell. Each night, I breathe you in and live.
When President Pierre Nkurunziza announced his run for a controversial third term in April, violence erupted in Burundi. Activists and authorities have reported a number of apparently targeted killings since Nkurunziza was re-elected in a disputed vote. There are accusations of frequent raids against opposition strongholds in the capital Bujumbura. The government denies they're behind the attacks and blames criminal elements instead. But the dead bodies continue to appear. Now, according to the UN, the official death toll is 134, but some say that number doesn't reflect the violent reality. Refugees have poured across the border and relations with neighbouring Rwanda are becoming strained. The deteriorating situation is also affecting relations with the European Union and ties with other African neighbours. We reached out to several members of the Burundian government and their supporters, but they declined to join us. The invitation is still open though, so if you're watching and your perspective is not involved in this show or being reflected, tweet us, #AJStream. The person to tweet is our digital producer, Omar Badar, today, sitting in for Malika Bilal. Omar, what's going on online in terms of this Burundian situation?
You know, we're seeing actually quite a bit of back and forth about what is really happening in Burundi. So we have people like NT over here who says, peace, stability, love, and patience. Now, there are some negligible insecurity issues that are blown out of proportion by the media. But to that, we have Joanna who responds by saying, don't be a liar. Peace and stability, who are you fooling? Go tell that to the bodies that are littering the streets. Now, for those at home, we want to know what you think about what is happening in Burundi, so be sure to tweet us using the #AJStream.
So the guest in our studio just rolled his eyes when Omar was reading out that tweet. I'm sure you'll see more of that in just a moment. Carl Christabiyumva is a Burundian blogger. Carl was on the show a few months ago, and you'll find out why he's here in the studio in just a moment. We also have Keti Nivea Bandi, that's the poet that you met a little bit earlier. She's also an ambassador for Enfants de Pays. That's a group that memorialises victims of the violence in Burundi. Joining us on the phone, Teddy Manzina is a Burundian photographer, and Archie Henry is a political analyst and radio commentator in Rwanda. So good to have you all here, everybody. Chris, why were you rolling your eyes? Why did you do that? What was the moment that Omar read out the tweet and you were just like, seriously?
Yeah, because first of all, I follow that account, and it's a pro-government account, and it's just the speech that they've been rolling out since everything started. They're saying that the media is blowing everything out of proportion, but it's just that I guess it's a strategy of trying to avoid being responsible for what's happening. I guess the guy isn't political, I don't think he's in government or anything, but he's just, he's just on the side of the government. And they have this speech where they try to minimize what's happening, but it's out there. There's bodies littering the streets every day. We've actually gotten used to it. It's like you wake up and there's photos of bodies.
How can you get used to that? How can you get used to bodies on the
streets? I know, it sounds so bad to get used to bodies on the street, but it's been going on for so long. It's like you wake up, I literally wake up every day expecting to get a WhatsApp message or see, open my Twitter and see images of dead bodies that were found, or hear about an attack somewhere in town. It can be an attack on the government supporters, but there's always something. There's always someone dead. There's always a body that's found somewhere, and that is just, you get used to it in the sense that you expect it, because it's been happening every day, but you don't really, it still shocks, it still hurts, but yeah.
Kelly, I mean, it's different people's experiences and different families are in different places of Bujumbura. Are you finding the same with your family, your friends in Bujumbura, that there are literally bodies in the streets?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not only my experience, it's the experience of anyone who's who's currently in Burundi, we see, because I'm not there right now, we see this on social media, on WhatsApp. We get these messages all the time. But the people who are on the ground tell it to us as well. So they're living in a state of absolute fear. You wake up in the morning, you do not know if you're going to be able to cross town and get to your office or wherever else. A lot of the official working hours have been adjusted because of this, so people go home earlier, and you don't know if you're going to make it home in the evening. You literally every day feels like a new year. Anything could happen.
When did this start, Katie?
Yes.
Well, it started gradually, but it really was triggered by the announcement that the president was going to run for the third term. Right the next days when the protests started in Burundi, and on that very day, the repression began by the police. It's been a very brutal repression to silence the voices that were against the third term, which resulted in many people dying. Actually, one of the first victim was a young boy, barely 13, and he was a victim. And since then, the list is endless. They were talking about 100 and something earlier. I think that number doesn't begin to.
Well, that official figure, 134, was the official figure.
I think that was like
Exactly.
a month ago.
A month ago.
Yeah, there
right.
was a report that came out from this organization. I don't remember which one, and the figure was about 130 something. Sure. But a month ago, and like every day we wake up to images of dead bodies. We wake up to news of people that have been killed in this neighborhood or this part of the country. So I think the number is a bit higher than that now.
But we do have a dispute that we're seeing online from people who disagree on who's really responsible for this violence. So we have somebody like Pierre over here who says opposition members leave in police cars and a few days later they are found dead, tortured and tied up. You don't see a worse crackdown than that. But LR over here, on the other hand, says the plotters of the failed coup have turned into an urban insurgency in a few neighborhoods, but they lack popular support. Teddy, what do you think of this allegation that there's basically an insurgency against the government that's really responsible for the violence?
I agree with them. I do agree with them. I think that the catastrophe is going on. But on the other side, I would like to be a bit positive. It's not because they are not killing people. They are killing a lot of people now. I think mainly people are killed by official, by police. They are taken by police. They are found dead. But on the other side, I'm sure for the context I have, I would like to say that I tweet a lot. I think I'm the most, one of the biggest tweeters. I have the biggest tweeter in Burundi. One of the people who are tweeting the most about the news instead of taking photos. But what I would like to say is that people now, they know that this can't go on. People believe that they are together. People have been together demonstrating against the third mandate. People have been together solidar. There's no any more problems of Hutus or Tutsi among the protesters that I followed. I followed all the demonstrations, all the protests. And I think that tomorrow will be a good day. I believe so. I have the hope. Because I can see the government is isolated. The government is denying whatever is going on. The government is trying to say that
Teddy?
Burundi is doing okay while people are dying every day.
Teddy?
So I would like to say that let's keep hope. Let's look at the people. Look at the way they look.
Teddy?
Don't say look at my photos.
Teddy might be having trouble hearing me because he's on the phone. Teddy, this is Femi. I'm looking through your eyes here as a photographer, and you're standing behind the security forces. This is a picture that you sent us. You're standing behind the security forces, and then you're looking at protesters. So from that perspective, how do you feel the security forces are dealing with this sort of tumult that's happening in Bujumbura? What are you capturing?
For the moment, they're very in an uncomfortable situation because they tried to shut down everybody, but they couldn't because the people are together. The people even in the areas which are supposed to be protesting or have been protesting, people are still together. They are solid. They eat together, they sleep together, and they die together. No matter they are Hutus, Tutsis, or whatever.
There's this picture here that I'm looking at, that we're looking at right now, Teddy.
Yes.
Teddy, there's a picture now. There's one man, and there's a lot of security forces just facing this one man. What's going on in this picture?
Oh, this man was one of the most courageous guys I've seen because all the other people, protesting were like 200 meters behind him, but he walked towards the police. He was, I think he was burned by a tear gas thrown by the police like seconds after. But I think it was one of the images, one of the faces of what I've seen. It was in the south of Bujumbura, and I think for me it's one of the pictures I've taken during this period, which was showing how people were determined to keep their keep their constitution and to keep the Arusha agreement.
Okay, Omar.
So, Femi, one of the things that we often do for our shows is ask people to submit video comments. And actually today is one of those days where we don't have any. And we have somebody who's weighing in on why that might be. We have Taurus over here who says, you're asking for a video in a country where just standing next to someone who's showing opposition to people in power can get you killed. But there's also the claim that this is not just one-sided. We have David over here who says, daily life is fine, except I can't go to where I was born because they will accuse me of being an Ibn Akure, which is basically a youth
the militia
group that is associated with the government.
Right.
Yep. Archie, I want to throw this to you. What is is it fair to say that not just people who are protesting, but people who might be expressing their views are really putting themselves in danger in the country right now?
Yeah, I think so. But I also think what's very worrying is that the repression of the protest movement by the police, by the Secret Service, et cetera, has actually brought a form of radicalization to the protest movement. And now people in those protest neighborhoods have been getting access to weapons. And every single day, especially in the nighttime, you have battles, literally battles between people armed and the police. And there's an escalation of violence on both sides. And it's very worrying because we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel of this. And every morning, as Chris was saying, there's people dead in the street, whether they were unarmed protesters or whether they were armed or whether they were police. And the fact that people are dying every day is very worrying.
I think that's a very good point that Archie is making. We have to be honest with ourselves and, well, with the world that is watching us and following everything that is happening. The violence is on both sides. You have people that die on both sides. When the whole protest movement started in April, the situation is very different now. Like, it escalated quite quickly. You have people who have arms on both sides, on the pro-president or anti-third term. And you have the coup d'etat, which failed, changed a lot of things in the situation in terms of there were a lot of defections in the army.
And that was back in May, is that
was back in May.
Right.
So you have.
So the president was out of the country.
Yeah.
And while he was out of the country, there was an attempted coup.
Yeah.
And then he was back within, 10 days? It was just a couple of days.
It was actually just 2 days.
Yeah, it was the fastest, fastest failed coup that I've ever heard of. Yeah.
It was a couple of days, literally. I remember that very vividly because on the day of the coup, a number of women and myself had been protesting in the streets very peacefully, but were brutally repressed by the police. So when the coup was announced, we were literally in the streets. And when it failed, when it was announced that the coup failed, actually a couple of days later, it was very clear. It was very clear that all of us were going to be in very serious danger. We started receiving phone calls telling us to leave the country as soon as possible. And that's how I left right after that.
Yeah, we have a picture of you here that Teddy actually took, and you can see here, this is Kelly protesting. And then, Kelly, what was the lead up to you going, okay, I need to get out of here? What happened?
Yes. Hello. This picture was taken 3 days before the coup. I think it was the 10th of May. And Katie was, I can say, she was one of the leaders or the leader of the women group. And it was a very good surprise for me as a photographer because I've been taking pictures in all popular area, protesters, a little bit more violent, and there were like this group of women, non-violent, pushing the police, pushing them, and they were the first to get into the center town. Before the coup, they were the only one actually to get there because the police couldn't even have the courage to shoot at them. At the last day, they've been more violent than they were the first days. But I would like to congratulate Katie and say that this movement, I hope that this movement will remain after all this violence and after all this story, and when democracy will be back, because there will be a good group, a good reference to see how a group of people, a group of women can get into politics, but from another way, not the ways they used to give us to go through political parties and so.
Right.
It's about people's rights, families' rights.
Teddy, I want to actually pit you against Chris here, because Chris, you were on our show a few months ago, and we had the ambassador for Burundi, who's based here in Washington DC, and you had a debate with him, as our other guest did.
Yeah.
And then what happened to you?
And then I started receiving threatening phone calls telling me to stop what I was doing if I wanted to be safe.
What can you explain what it was like? You pick up the phone and you'd hear what?
You pick up the phone, first of all, it's an anonymous number most of the time, and then you hear someone say something like, if you care about your life or if you want to continue living, stop what you're doing. And sometimes you're like, okay, what am I doing? But you know, when you get it after
you didn't genuinely think, what am I doing?
Yeah. You know,
that's a little disingenuous. You knew what you were doing.
I knew what I was doing,
yes.
But you know, you're like, what am I doing that's wrong?
Yes.
You can voice your opinion out. You can put your opinion
because
out. Because
I'm going to be honest, on that show, you were laughing at the ambassador.
I know.
You were rolling your eyes as you are wont to do,
I know.
and you were laughing at him. No, that's not a reason for you to necessarily run away from your country.
I went a bit overboard, even in terms of respecting our elders in our culture. But that is not a good enough reason to leave a country. That's not enough a good reason to be threatened with death. That is not a good enough reason. You know, I shouldn't feel unsafe.
Why is that kind of opposition in Burundi? Why can't you just literally say, this is not really how I see the situation. I'm not too sure that I would like a third-term president. Why is that not okay to say that in Burundi right now?
When I was on the show last April, I thought it was okay, but apparently it isn't.
Because you're sitting here in Washington, D.C.
Exactly.
All right.
You know, beyond the impact that people who are actively, who are active on this issue are facing, there's the issue of the impact on society in general. So we have Jazeera over here who says many have fled, many others are killed. The economy is shrinking by 7.2% according to the IMF, and tensions between Rwanda and Burundi are on the rise, as well as with the EU. And we have Nicole over here who says life has slowed down, shops are empty, everybody is home by 6 p.m. Archie, do you have a sense of how widespread this is? I mean, is this pretty much everywhere in the country that you have this, nobody in the shops anymore in the evenings?
Well, first of all, I'm not right now in Burundi, but from reports that I'm getting, much of the capital city is actually functioning. I mean, but it's still very much concerning that in some areas of the capital, there's violence every day, as I was saying. And I think what's more worrying, as this tweet was alluding, is that people are frustrated in Burundi, on whatever side they are of the political spectrum. If they're in opposition, you have 200,000 refugees outside of Burundi, registered refugees through the UN. That doesn't count all the other refugees, like Chris or like Keddy. There's plenty of refugees out there, and even people that are happy, that are pro-government. Can also be frustrated, the fact that they like their leader and that they don't want to see this violence, et cetera. Everybody's affected in Burundi, whether they're in the capital, in the neighborhoods that are tense with violence and protests, or whether they're in calm neighborhoods. Burundians are feeling frustrated, angry, and are afraid of what's to come next.
I mean, life does go on. Okay, Katie was about to say something.
Yeah, Katie, go ahead.
Sorry, I think what I like to say about this third term is that it's a deadly term. It really is. And we've lost lives both on the protester side, but also on the side of the government. And Nkurunziza himself has lost one of his closest aides, who was General Adolphe Nshimirimana. So it really is a deadly term. And I continue to fail to understand how this is still rolling out. People are dying on a daily basis. And without any intervention, without any...
Kelly, the thing that I find very confusing, and this is Kelly and Teddy and Archie, I just don't understand. What would be the government strategy to push Burundi back into a very unstable situation. That's the bit I don't quite get from this.
But that's the thing for me. There is no vision for a country. That means that you're not thinking about the good. They're not thinking as you are or as I would.
Because if your closest aide is and aides are being assassinated, it's not like you're even creating a stable situation around your own government supporters. Even everybody's at risk.
No,
absolutely, and you are at risk yourself. But you are so engulfed in your own very small vision of yourself that you are willing to let everything burn, including your country and your people. Because today Nkurunziza is in power, tomorrow, what will his children be? They'll still be in Burundi, his grandchildren, So you're not thinking long term. You're really thinking on a very, very small scale. And
Okay.
A few years ago, I addressed that in one of my poems called Les Petits Hommes, and it literally says that the small vision of some of our leaders, and you see this in Burundi, but you see it also in other countries in Africa. They're trying to reduce our countries that we lend them the privilege to lead those countries, but they're trying to reduce that country to their very own small visions. And this is something that is not sustainable. And definitely the people will rise, and freedom and justice always end up winning in the end. I'm very confident, like Teddy, that we will overcome. But what scandalizes me is the silence of the world.
Ketty, how?
Because
Teddy, hold tight for a moment. We're coming to you. Yeah, how from this stage right now, you're not even in Burundi, you can't be in Burundi. There are armed battles on a regular basis. How do you overcome? How do Burundians overcome?
Right now, today, it's a very sad day. That's why I'm wearing black. That's why many of us are wearing black today. We're trying to express our grief. So today, it looks hopeless. But I try, as a poet and as an artist and as a human being, I try to look beyond today as well. I think this crisis is bringing us together in a way that we may not have been before. We're getting stronger together. And out of this, the people who really dream good dreams for the country, the people who want to build this country are outraged today. So they are standing up and starting all kinds of initiatives to be able to bring the country back on track. And this is what I mean by I'm hopeful that in the end, Nkurunziza is not the end of Burundi. Burundi will go on. It existed forever. It will keep continuing. But what I wanted to bring up earlier as well is that I am scandalized, literally scandalized, by the silence of the international community and especially the region towards what's going on today. It was 2 years ago, Charlie Hebdo was, 5 journalists were killed in Charlie Hebdo.
So Kelly, this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that Belgium is withdrawing aid, not giving aid to the Nkurunziza administration. You have UN involved in Burundi as well. Is that ignoring the situation?
It's not ignoring. I'm not saying they're ignoring because they've been issuing a lot of statements. What I'm saying is that those statements are not saving lives.
Right.
People are still dying.
Just talking.
Right now, Burundians don't want to see statements anymore because those statements are effective when you're writing them to people who listen to statements and who actually take them into account. But in our situation,
also, I'm just remembering here, the AU and also neighboring countries as well are also talking, they're meeting. Obviously, not enough. Omar, where do you want to leave us before we move on to the post-show?
I'll leave you with somebody who's painting basically a really drastic picture of how the situation is right now. Hope for Burundi says, childhood is replaced by trauma, music is replaced by bombs and gunfire, and hope and joy are stolen. Murder has become common. Certainly not the prettiest side.
Chris, are you going to go home?
If I can jump in.
Archie, I'm going to push you to the post-show because we've got 45 seconds and I don't want to squeeze you. I know what you've got to say is really important. Chris, if you could go home, would you go home? Can you go home?
I can't go home for the moment.
Right.
And in my opinion, it's not just about the third term anymore. I think that it has escalated to a place where each party in the whole situation needs to be responsible of what's happening.
Right.
Both sides need to realize that something like there's violence on both sides, and they have to take the responsibility and work together to find a common solution. Otherwise,
Chris Sabayumba, Hetty Nivya Bandi, Teddy Manzina, and Archie Henry. I know they've all got a lot more to say about this subject. I'm sure you do too. Hashtag AJ Stream. We'll see you in the post show. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Stream's online post show. A chance to get back and pick up on some of the other things the guests wanted to talk about. Archie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on what Ketty was talking about regarding the region's response, not just the region, the continent, perhaps even the world. There's been, countries have been trying to halt the crisis, find a political solution, stop the violence. I'm thinking of some countries in Europe maybe that took sanctions, or the EU that expressed some statements condemning the violence and asking for a resolution. But this hasn't done anything, and there's been a very inefficient international response.
Archie, I'm losing a little bit of your audio, but let me ask you this.
It really seems like
I remember President Museveni
on everyday basis.
Yeah. I remember President Museveni was leading this sort of outreach to President Nkurunziza to maybe say, look, maybe a third term isn't such a good idea. But how bizarre that the Ugandan president should be asking the president of Burundi to step down. Maybe it's like, maybe you're not sending the best person for the job.
Very bizarre, exactly.
Yeah, there was a lot of criticism. There's a lot of criticism coming from Burundian civil society and opposition, or one of the parties to the negotiation, one of the parties to resolve the political crisis, and they were not happy with Museveni. I mean, he came to Burundi, and then he sent his defense minister, and there were talks, and it all seemed to be going okay for a little bit, that he was at least trying to find a resolution. But since,
he would be the last person in Africa I would send.
Exactly.
I'm not a diplomat, but I would not be sending him.
I mean, the guy is notorious.
Sending somebody who's been, was it 20 years? How long has he been in? I've lost track.
Forever. He's been running Uganda for longer than I have
he's
been
like, what, did he discuss how to stay in office for forever?
And he's notorious for oppressing his opponents. He's notorious for doing the exact same thing.
I know, maybe they just
doing.
discuss tips.
Maybe tips.
Maybe that's not the question. If I can jump in.
Yeah, Teddy. And then Omar's going to come in right after you. Go ahead, Teddy.
Yes, if I can jump in. I think that's not the question, actually.
Okay.
Museveni came because there's nobody else wanted to come to Burundi to look at the situation.
Oh, that's awful. Teddy, that's
awful. He's an old man. He's there since '86. And he's done his war, he stabilized his country.
Well, who are you going to say? Kabila? Is Kabila going to come? No,
this is the thing. Never thought about the real situation in Bujumbura.
This is the thing.
Oh, man. We're laughing, but we're laughing ironically. This is not happy laughter. This is not happy laughter. This is exasperated laughter.
It's not. And everybody seems to be delegating this Burundian issue. The UN delegated to the AU, the AU delegates to the South African community.
Who should be coming to Burundi? Who would you pick out of the whole of Africa?
I think we should fix it ourselves.
How's that working out for you?
It's not exactly, because no one wants to be responsible. We're all throwing responsibilities on each other, and that's the day we decide to, okay, I'm responsible for this. I acknowledge that I did something wrong here.
But he's like, Burundi is responsible for this man-made crisis, okay? You totally...
Burundi as a whole, but there's many parties in it. There's like 5 groups.
It's not like anyone said, hey, go for a third term and mess up the country.
Obviously, it's Nkurunziza as the leader of the country. He's the one who takes the full responsibility, because he could have avoided all this from the beginning, and there's so many ways he could have avoided from it escalating to the point where it is. But, it's not just him. There are other people to blame as well, from the side of the whole anti-protest movement.
I almost got a few suggestions.
So basically you're saying we should fix it ourselves, and other people are saying we need international support for this, and that debate is actually reflected in the online community as well. You have Amina over here who says for the short term, external intervention by the East African community and the AU can halt the deteriorating situation, but on the other hand you have Nyundo over here who says a solution with the region and the international community is impossible. Burundians should aim at liberating themselves from this mess. Okay. Katie, are you sympathetic to that perspective?
What I would like to add to that last comment is that Burundians liberating themselves automatically means more violence. If there's going to be a liberation, and this is how it works all over the world, the other side is going to retaliate, and this means civil war.
Yeah.
And for me, as someone who doesn't want to see one more death, let's not minimize these people who are dying. They are people, they have histories, they have families, they have children. As someone who doesn't want to see people dying, I would like to see a force that comes in and protects civilians as we work out the politics of this. But there needs to be an urgent protection of civilians. For me, that is the emergency today.
Archie, what did you want to add?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Archie.
Yeah, there's this whole debate. Obviously, there's these comments from people saying Burundians should solve the crisis and the international community is incompetent. But it's actually, what we've been seeing is that in the attempts to resolve the Burundian crisis inside Burundi, through Burundian voices, that has completely failed. As much as we like to see Burundian
Right. Archie, I've lost your audio again. I'm so sorry. I apologize about that. I'm going to just skip across to Omar.
Sure. We have some discussion about the fact that it's very difficult to get information out of Burundi. We have Akenya Gary over here who says there are many underreported incidents. Since the demolition of independent media, there is a blackout on what's going on. But we have Darwin over here who also says the world ought to pay attention to Burundi. Now that they lack independent media, it's important to keenly follow people like Keri. So, Katie, for the people who are being told that they should follow you to know what's going on, where are you finding your information from? How are you actually keeping track of what's happening in the country?
One of the excellent sources of information.
Okay.
Yes,
Kenny, not Teddy.
Of course.
But you can follow both of them. They're both very good. All right, let Kenny first of all.
But yes, for me, one of the excellent sources and the most courageous sources of information is SOS Media. So right after the coup, 4 of the main independent radio stations were completely burned down. And like 85% or 90% of the journalists, Burundian journalists, have fled the country. A very small number of them have remained behind. They're resisting. They're working undercover. They're risking their lives every day to take photos of what's happening and reporting these. So it's through and I really would like to salute them right now, because it's through their amazing, incredible work that we are able to have pictures of what's going on, that we're able to know what's happening. So for me, that's one of the best sources of information.
And let me ask Teddy. Teddy, where do you get your information from? Because people are following you too.
Me, I've been a journalist for a while. I've been on the ground for now more than 5 years. So I have my network. Everybody has got his network in Burundi. So instead of abandoning and fleeing and going far, wherever I am, I can be in France, I can be in Europe, I can be in Africa, but I have my connections.
Yeah.
I have someone.
And he's a good journalist, so he's not telling us his sources. Did you notice that?
Every time.
Didn't tell us a single source.
I try to, and people.
It can be dangerous for the sources, by the way.
Believe in what I do, so they call me whenever, even if I don't ask for information, they bring it to me and I share it with my friends. Yes.
All right. Okay. I've got a little assignment for you to do right now. Use a word to describe Burundi 1 year ago, Chris.
Uncertain.
A word for today.
Worse.
And a word for the future.
Uncertain.
Wow. Okay, Archie, hopefully we can hear you. Describe Burundi last year.
It was joyful.
All right, Archie, that was wishful thinking on my part. We can't hear you. Kenny, describe Burundi in one word for last year.
Green.
Burundi in 1 year. It will be my last picture.
Yeah.
You can, I gave you a picture of a beautiful girl and her boyfriend running and protesting. But they look so nice and they look so beautiful. And some other guys around them. I think the future is that. It's the young guys, and it's the protest, and it's the resistance in the country. And Burundians will not leave the power, or the killings will not stop if people don't stand up and stop them. Wow. I would like it to be non-violent, but I'm not sure it can work.
Right. Katie, we started with some of your poetry. We'd like to end with your poetry. We're going to give you the last word. So I know you want to do it in French and then do the translation for us in English. And then I'm going to say thank you for joining us, everybody. Katie, over to you.
Les petits hommes, des hommes aux petites actions, des hommes aux petites ambitions, des hommes sans imagination, ont bandé les yeux à un petit pays au teint ombré de crépuscule qui, il était une fois, rêvait de devenir grand. Little men with small imagination, small actions, small dreams, blindfolded a country that once upon a time dreamt of becoming great.
Katie, Chris, Teddy, Archie, thank you for being part of the stream today. Take care, everybody.